So, we are going to look at lesson 7, and this is an interesting lesson. I think it will be good to take your time as you go through it. Make sure you're reading, make sure you're watching the videos. It can be a little confusing if you're going through it, trying to go through it too quickly. So, we're going to be looking at something called sprites, which are actually objects that have a lot of properties. Um, Same kind of properties like a character might use in a game or anything that you can interact with in a game, animations and such. Those sprites have a lot of information in them. They have designs, they have fills, they have strokes that outline them. They have all kinds of things, sizes, and of course the placement that a sprite enables you to put all of that sort of in one place, so it keeps all of that information organized in the code. So it uses something called dot notation, which is really connecting the sprite, which you give it a name, with a period followed by the property. So you'll see some examples of that as we go, but that is what that is. And we're going to go ahead and jump in. We're going to use sprites to help us keep track of lots of information. So in lesson 7, in unit 3, we're in bubble 2. We're going to read the instructions. The program uses new blocks that we haven't seen before. And we can see that here. This is just sort of looking at it. We're going to look at an example. Of course, most of you do not have anybody around you that could be a partner, but look at the code and think to yourself about how do you think it works. So I'm going to run the program. And I see an apple and I see a carrot. And it says variable fruit. I'm going to assume that's probably the apple. Create sprite 100, 200. So I'm going to guess that that is probably my X and Y value, since the apple is indeed at 100, 200 approximately. And then set animation apple. Okay. So there is also a button over here that says now animation. Ooh. So we see a place now in Game Lab where we can actually draw things and even make animations down the road, which is pretty cool. Of course, we're keeping it simple now, but that is how they draw things, characters and so forth. And then vegetable is going to be the carrot, and it is an animation set at 300, 200. About right there is the center of that animation, if it was in like a rectangle. So, all right. So we call the variables, and then 5, it tells us to draw them on the screen. So I think that's what's happening. Let's move forward. There's so much to do on that, other than, I guess we could have changed some of the lines to see what happens. If I put the draw sprites up here, now we're only drawing the apple because the carrot is below that. So that is good to play around with some of these numbers. I should have done that. We've played a lot around with values before. If we want to play around, and just you can see how changing these X and Y values change where it's located on the screen. Now I'll continue. Now this video here, in this video, the code.org employee that is doing this particular video is going to teach you what sprites are, what their properties are, and what problem do sprites solve, which is really about organizing all this information in one place and keeping it together. She talks a little bit about dot notation. And so these are all things that I would highly encourage. Um, go to this diamond shape um, video and make sure that you watch the video. If I try to record the video with the recording, it's going to be terrible and her sound will not match up with her lips. So I'm not going to play that on my video. But by all means, pause this one and go to back to code.org, watch that on your own before moving on. Now, this says how to create a sprite, and it tells us what we need to do. Right now, it's telling us to use this block. So if we go over here to sprites, variable sprite is equal to creates, it's going to, gets the value at the right in the middle of the screen, 200, 200. The default name is always sprite, tells us that we want to make it something more meaningful. They only appear on the screen when you draw them there. So we have to draw the sprite to make the sprites actually appear. Now, the default sprite for Game Lab is the gray rectangle. If you don't give it any properties, that is it. Let's see. It tells us to add the variable sprite, which we did, under the comment creating sprites, and add draw sprites under the comment drawing. Run the code to draw your first sprite on the screen. There we go. Sprites are drawn from their center. So unlike when we were drawing rectangles, we are drawing it from the center. So the center of the square is at 200, 200, not the rectangle. And that's a little confusing. Sprites are meant to interact with, whereas rectangles are just things or images or things that are drawn maybe on the screen. You can't really interact with them by clicking on them, but these are intended to be interacted with. You can see that it's located at 200, 200 in the middle. Okay, let's click finish. And it does tell us to ignore that yellow triangle right now. It's just because we haven't really done anything. This time, we're going to create two sprites, one on the left and one on the right. That's what it should do. But we see that it's actually only drawing one. And back in the second bubble, when I was playing around, I noticed that when I moved this draw sprites around, it changed where things are. If I put it at the very top, nothing happens. As I rearrange my lines of code, remember code reads from top to bottom. So it's going to read line 1. It's going to define this sprite, left sprite, and then it says draw it. And so that's what we see here. We see the left sprite being drawn, but the right sprite has no draw sprite. So it says we don't need to add any code. So although I bet that we could, I'm going to pull it out here just so we can see. We could do that. But what they really want us to do is to rearrange the code to make sure both sprites show up. So we just need to simply make sure that our draw sprite command is after where we've actually defined our sprites and our properties. There we go. That's all we got to do. Bubble 6. This one now, we have some animations on the screen. And you can see the animations should be an alien, a bunny, a flybot, and a plane. That's what has already been drawn. But I only see the alien. So run the code to see what happens. Look in the animation tab to see what animations are available to you. We just did that. Feel free to alter the animations or choose a new one. So if we wanted to choose a new one or to alter it, I could come in here and draw with my little pen, and I could give him a little black dot. I could do other things as well. I can also come down here and look for new animations. Maybe I don't like any of those, but I'm hungry and I want a hamburger. So you can upload images just like you could in Scratch if you've ever used that, or even draw your own all the way, just get creative and draw your own. So you can just kind of peek through those animations. So we are going to use the set animation command to change the look of the other sprites because we do not want boxes. Okay. Now, let's look at what we've got here. We've got 4 sprites that have been created. They were given the name of top left, top right, bottom left sprite, and bottom right sprite. Also using camel case, which code.org doesn't really use that terminology, but that's what it's called when the first word is not capitalized and every word after that is. Since we don't use spaces in our names of our variables, we use capital letters to indicate those new words. All right, so bottom right sprite, dot set animation. So this is that dot notation. And we are assigning it to the animation that we have that's called alien. And you can see we could actually change that to one of the other ones that we have loaded. But I'm going to leave the alien there for now. And we want to use that set animation to change the look of the other sprites. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and drag this out here 3 more times. And so we just need to follow the same pattern that they followed. They said bottom right sprite. Well, let's do top left and top right sprite. Top left sprite. Top right. Oop, no spaces. Sprite. And then we've got bottom right. We still need bottom left sprite. And we want to give them an animation. And again, we can use the ones that they've already loaded for us, or play around and do our own animations. But this is to be able to get through this level, or to be able to say that you understand this level, you should at least be able to assign each of those rectangles to an animation, an actual picture. Pretty cool. Now, notice that that alien also now has the little black dot that's in his eyeball. So that was something that I just modified. I didn't change a lot, but any modifications that you make on the screen are saved and can be used. You can either copy it, so if you wanted to, down the road, we'll learn how to make moving sort of animations, and you do that like by making duplicates. So I could make his eyes get bigger and bigger. Oh my. And I could do another one and have it all black. Anyway, I could make some animations happen. Or I could move his arm and make it look like he's walking. Lots of things we can do there. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to click finish. Let's move on. Bubble 7 is another video. So I'm going to pause this for just a minute, and I would love it if you guys watch the video on your own. All right, I hope that you watched that video. It was pretty interesting, and he's mainly showing you how to go about using some of the features in the animations to create your own animations, as well as, again, using that dot notation for the set animation to name the sprites. So in Bubble 8, and this is the last activity that we'll do, but in this one, things are not looking right. It's supposed to look like this. 3 different sprites. One says get ready. One looks like a soda can, and then the other one has an ice cream. They are obviously not drawn in the right order because get ready is not on top. So there's some things we need to do. We need to make sure that the right sprite is in front, and we also need to fix the gray square so that it looks like a soda. So when we look over here at and just like shapes, sprites are drawn in the order they're created. There are 2 problems in the code. So I see first we have the message, then we have the drink, then we have dessert. I notice that message is set animation to text, get ready. The drink is set animation to text, soda, and the dessert says drink set animation to ice cream. Well, that's weird because the drink is obviously supposed to be a soda. So I think that they meant to say to actually call the variable dessert here for the ice cream. And I think what happened is as we read the code from top to bottom, when the program read that the drink was soda, it was soda. But because in the immediate next line, 2 lines that follow, it changes it to ice cream, what we see is the last thing that it is, which is ice cream. So let's see if that fixed the soda problem. It did. So now we have a soda and we have the ice cream, which is great. That's what we want. But we still want the get ready text to be in the front. So on the bottom is the last thing that gets done. So if we were a painter and we were painting these things, if we want it to be on top, we're going to do it last. This shows us that we're putting the text on our palette first. So let's drag it to the bottom below the dessert, the ice cream. Now let's try. And that's it. That's all we have to do for that one. And we are finished. When you go to your next level, it is a kind of a matching, figure out which of the programs would put what on the screen. And so it's a pretty quick assessment and also a skill builder too, helping you analyze what you're seeing on the screen. We will finish up with lessons 10 or Bubble 10 and 11 on Monday before Thanksgiving. But if you are going to be out of town and you know that you're going to be unable to be here on Monday, you may go ahead and do Bubbles 10 and 11, and that is just fine. I will do them on a different video.